Okay, this just in. They found a unicorn man inside of a cave in Greece. You see this? He's got a horn. I got to move that out of the way. Boom. It's kind of a bladed looking unicorn. They said it used to be longer and come to a point and kind of hook up. I found a piece of it right in there in front of it and everything, but it's all kind of sealed in that crap from stalagmites and stuff. Just kidding. April Fools. I was going to do this as an April Fool's version, but I didn't want people to think the information that contains in it to be an April Fool's or a joke in any kind of way, because it seems very much a serious topic. So let's get into this. The human skull that challenges the out of Africa theory. This is the account of the discovery of a skull that has the potential to change what we know about human evolution and suppression and cover-up which followed. Oh no. In 1959, in an area called Chalky Dickey, yeah, so I hope they don't name this man Chalky Dickey, man. In Petralona, northern Greece, a shepherd came across a small opening to a cave which became visible when a thick covering of snow finally melted. He gathered a group of villagers to help him clear the entrance so he could go inside and explore. They found a cave rich in stalactites and stalagmites, but also they found something surprising. A human skull embedded in the wall, which later research uncovered a huge number of fossils, including pre-human species, animal hair, fossilized wood, and stone and bone tools. The skull was given to the University of Thessalonica, Greece, by the president of the Petralona community. Agreement was that once the research was done, a museum would be opened featuring the findings from the Petralona cave and the skull. Oh, this is Petralona, man. Okay. And the skull would be returned to be displayed in the museum, something that never happened. Dr. Aris Polonius, member of the UNESCO's AEIOU, Internal Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Sciences, later founded the Anthropological Association of Greece. In an expert anthropologist who was working at the University of Moscow at the time was invited by the Prime Minister of Greece to return to Greece to take a position of a university chair in Athens. This was due to the publication of this book, The Origins of the Greeks, which provides excellent research showing that the Greek people didn't originate from Slavic nations but were indigenous to Greece. So in other words, he's saying that they didn't come as Proto-Indo-Europeans, but those type of people had been there all the time, and they just scooted over into it. Upon his return to Greece, Dr. Polonius was made aware of the discovery of the skull at Petralona and immediately started studying the Petralona cave and skull, because that would be a predating situation here in the first place. And it seems to radically predate it. If you look at it, it looks a little marbled over, and it's because it's been assimilated with all the limestone drips onto it, and I believe they came up with the idea that this horn-looking thing out of his head is nothing more than a stalagmite. It started dripping on his head from a stalagmite above it, and as it did, it started forming one, which coated the skull kind of and sealed it somewhat, but you could still make it out, and then started forming up. The weird thing is that it formed a blade type of form, but they think that that ended up making two little spots, and it grew up and then grew together and became solidified, and blah 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 blah. And I've read a few papers on these people talking about the BS about it too and everything, because it's been in everything from ancient aliens to stupid crap too. Use hand sanitizer. The Petralona man, or Arcanthropus of Petralona, as it has been called, was found to be 700,000 years old, making it the oldest human Europeoid, presenting European traits, to that age ever discovered in Europe. Now, the oldest human got pushed back just here in this last couple of years with archaeology in North Africa, right on the coast of the Mediterranean, in the Jebel Erud cave system, and they said it dates to 300. They actually try to peg it at 315,000 years ago, and they're classifying it as Homo sapiens sapiens. It has a more thing, but this is a predating human to that right there. So the Homo sapiens sapiens has gone from 60 or 80,000 years to 120,000 to 200 to 315,000 years now. But now we're looking at a European that's 700,000 years ago that predates, and it looks like it's coming in from that Lucy idea also, by the way. Dr. Polanos' research showed that Petralona man evolved separately in Europe and was not an ancestor of a species that came out of Africa. In other words, in the paper that they showed that the traits that are shown in Lucy and stuff like that, because it's warping like this, and this is like this, and modern humans came out of it, this is more close related to all these people than that is. And your little Lucy thing almost didn't want to say that it's not even a ancestor. Could be an ancestor to Africans or sub-Saharan Africans, but none of the Caucasians, like Egypt, North Africa, all around the Mediterranean, Europe, Proto-Indo-Europeans, and so on. People don't realize the fact that during the last ice age, which is just 10,000 years ago, that all of that was so pushed under ice, most anybody was down in this area anyhow, right? More of the Mediterranean. It's called Middle Earth. Mediterranean means Middle Earth. It's called Middle Earth for a reason. Anyhow, let's just go into what he says. He says, evolved separately in Europe, and it was not an ancestor of a species that came out of Africa. In 1964, independent German researchers Breidinger and Sinkenberg decided to dismiss Mr. Polo's findings, arguing that the skull was only 50,000 years old and was indeed an ancestor that came out of Africa. So they were saying that it wasn't even that old, and that it is a variation of somebody, and therefore if it's not that old, then it would have been some variation that came after, not something that dates back to such an early archaic date. However, research published in the U.S. in 1971, when archaeology got to a much better state, in the prestigious Archaeology magazine, backed up by findings that the skull was indeed 700,000 years old. This was based on analysis of the cave stratigraphy and sediment in which the skull was embedded. Further research in the cave discovered isolated teeth in two pre-human skeletons dating back further to 800,000 years, as well as other fossils of various species of animals. Today, most academics who have analyzed the Petralona remains say that the cranium of Archanthropus, which would mean ancient bringer of man, of Petralona, belongs to an archaic hominid distinguished from Homo erectus, and from both the classic Neanderthals and atomically modern humans, but showing characteristics of all those species and presenting strong European traits. A skull dating back 700,000 years, which is either Homo sapien or Homo sapiens, or part Homo sapien, is in direct conflict with the out of Africa theory of human evolution. And I don't know if you're aware of what this entails or entitles, but the idea is that somehow recently, in some believe as early as 70,000 years, no one had ever come out of Africa till then except Homo erectus and stuff. And then all of a sudden a new human, like there's the cradle, and they come out, and then apparently, by what's been said over years and still gets said today, although these have been debunked ideas forever, that apparently from being in colder climates and being farther away from the equator, less used to light, that people magically turned into Caucasians somehow. And of course, that gets refuted on the idea that, well, here's Cro-Magnon man at 40,000 years. Here's Neanderthal that goes all the way back. And the thing that they want to leave out of this situation is, well, Cro-Magnon goes back over 300,000 years. Simply and easy. I believe they've pulled it off 460 or something like that. And of course, there seems to be a proto coming into Neanderthal. And Neanderthal is all non-African whatsoever. But Neanderthals, we know, died out, and that's not really who we are. Although something that they got with had some admix that got with us, or, and I say us, everyone in the world except for sub-Saharan Africans, basically. And, you know, from islanders to people in Hawaii to everybody. So it happened in such an archaic date, it's that everybody's got that. But, and they do now due to admix and situations too, and some of the early populations like Yoruba show back migrations that have it and for certain things like that. But the idea is that they somehow magically mutated. Well, Cro-Magnon, which was really taller than even modern man today, and who conspicuously, and I'm going to go through a video series about this, is shown to be non-prognostic, and what that would mean and entail at that early of a date. And his genetics that they finally been able to catch her from at least around 30,000 BC is extant today, meaning that people still have this genetic haplogroup and everything. It's still going on today, and extremely popular in Europe. And there's a lot of famous people that have this haplogroup. And so, by a process of deduction, it would look like if anything came out of Africa, it was before. But wouldn't it show that actually the thing that made the people that we know as Africans, maybe all except sub-Saharan Africans, weren't from there and could have had totally separate ideals? Do you believe now that a baboon, okay, so that comes from Africa, right? You believe now that a baboon and orangutan had a common ancestor, and that common ancestor was in Africa? That maybe some baboons came out and then everything changed? Do you believe that no, it wasn't, they didn't come from baboons? See, that's not the way this works, people. There's something before that, and there's a variation that happens, but apparently there's other variations sometimes, and sometimes there's not. It comes on branches. And if we could get Homo erectus's variants of DNA, or even some DNA out of Homo erectus, it would show us an extreme change of our thought line. But it's variants too, because Homo erectus just in itself shows radical variance. And so what they're calling Homo erectus, a lot of people have thought they should have broken into 4 or 5 subcategories in the first place. And over through time and changes, and you know, like they give a third name on something, or it's Homo sapiens sapiens and things, and that a lot of people, even modern day, should probably be classed as Homo sapiens this, Homo sapiens that, Homo sapiens this. But due to political correct type, gotta be all unity situation and blah blah blah, and don't be racial and all these things, and it's been going on for quite some time. And Darwinism was meant to believe that we all came out of that somehow, and ever since people have been deep studying that. As soon as they got into deep study and all these cranial things, they were like, no. Well, in North Africa, so Ethiopia and Africa had Caucasians in it. And did they go out and come back in? And everybody's all, no, it's all one people. And they go, well, no, it looks like there's different people here. At least the comeback-ins are definitely Caucasians from everywhere. And that happened a long, long time ago, well over 40,000 years ago. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. like to the tune of hundreds of times, and it just keeps getting shoved out of the way into this pile of what they try to dismiss. And it's funny how all the data they have is like three things, and the data to dismiss is becoming an overwhelming elephant in the room that no one can get past anymore. Well, apparently, if you squinch around, why don't you just go around the other way? Why don't you quit avoiding the elephant in the room? And that's been going on now for a while too. But people, seriously, whenever I was even growing up, a child of the 60s and into the 70s, and you heard about it, where people would just get berated and lose their tenure and all kinds of things that are happening, for trying to go against exactly the current paradigm they want you to teach and stuff. And you think, well, that would be totally separate. No, it's not totally separate. Well, isn't there separate of church and state? Well, yeah and no. I mean, if all these people are devout Christian stuff, then they still believe in some manner or form that a woman grew from a rib and ate from a magic tree because a talking snake told her to. So, 4000 BC or something like that. So, I think, all you have to do is say, look, there's a fossil. And they can try to say, well, radiocarbon dating is wrong. And you're like, okay, if it's off by a factor of 10, still fossil. Oh, it's by a factor of 100. It's fossil. Dinosaurs were not Jesus horses. I'm sorry if I offend anybody. Let me just go on before I offend more people. For my videos that show the truth and reality of the Bible are different topics. But then again, doesn't this have something to do with it all? For people think that quite often encompasses some type of reality. And it does show that these people, these Caucasian people of the 12 tribes, got all together and what happened out of that. But that's just one set of people when it was going on, and it really doesn't talk about or refer to anybody else. So, that in fact isn't all-encompassing in a way, and science tries to be all-encompassing, although you could specialize and try to figure out exactly here and there and there and then correlate that data. Oh, that'd be incredible, but people try to steer away from that, and once people specialize, they seem to be stuck in that, and they won't pick a few more spurs to go off of and then start correlating stuff. The thing that I like about what I did is I've been somewhat well-rounded all over, grounded in an area that has a variant into it. Extreme variant from all angles. So anyhow, further excavations continued in the cave of Petralona with the participation of international researchers, 46 specialists from 12 separate countries, which provided further proof of Dr. Polonis' claims, including remarkable findings like fossilized pieces of wood and oak leaf, animal hair, and coprolites. Coprolites means poo, which has fossilized over time, but inside that they can break it all up and still see what was in it, what people ate and stuff. It's like extremely, you wouldn't believe what archaeologists, how they freak out over a coprolite, which enabled accurate dating as well as the most continuous presence of stone and bone tools of the Arcanthropus evolutionary stage from the lower 750,000 years to the upper 550,000 years. So an area of 200,000 years of this same person or type of people living in the same area shown in this cave. And it's possibility, because the cave opening was all but closed off, that had been helped to happen in some way and come back, and they'd go and come back and hope there wasn't an animal in there, and one time they never came back and nobody ever opened up the cave again, and it became overgrown and no one ever noticed it. It's hard to believe no one ever walked past it, but perhaps people walked past it and thought, maybe there's something in there. Yeah, or maybe there got to be tales told of things that were living in caves, like dragons and all kinds of stuff. let's continue. The research, after an interruption due to the dictatorship in Greece, continued up to 1983. It was then ordered by the government that all excavation at the site were forbidden to anyone, including the original archaeological team. And for 15 years, nobody had access to the site or to the findings. No reason was provided by the government. Was this denial access to prevent the extraction of whatever new scientific conclusions remained hidden within the incredible fossils embedded within the layers of the cave walls? Well, after all, the Archaeological Society of Greece took the case into courts, 15 years later, they were again allowed access to the cave. But since then, the Ministry of Culture is trying in any way to overcome the court's decision, and further trials proceed from the 80s. And sad to say it, but some of the people involved were in their 40s when this began, in the 60s and stuff, and now they're at the point they're not even going to be involved, and they're going to have to take Padawans associates if they're even allowed to come back in. And they'll probably wait till the point that they are much older than this man that you see here and say, well, yeah, you can come back in there, and they go, I can't even climb down that cave anymore. Dr. Polano's findings contradicted conventional views regarding human evolution, and his research was suppressed. Dr. Polanos and his wife were physically attacked and injured in their home in 2012, and the culprits were never found. I heard about this. I never put it in the vid. He and his team have been denied further access to the cave to complete their research and study, and the whereabouts of the skull is unknown. Today, as a sign sits outside the cave of Petralona, stating that the skull found in the cave was only 300,000 years old. And on a Wikipedia today, you will see references dismissing the evidence and trying to date the Petralona skull within acceptable parameters between 160 and 240,000 years old, saying that the people, now what's weird is that's okay now, but before they found the Ethiopian skulls of 10 or 12 years ago and went through that research, this would have been in question. Well, did they come here and go there, come here and go there? Now it would have been like, oh, well, there's 315,000. So, yeah, well, oh, okay, so they went there. So people can't go anywhere in a short period of time, but somewhere between 240 and 315,000, wow, they can make a large trip and a big bit of difference. All you got to do is make a trip. So people, think about this. What you do is you take Eskimos and you walk them into North America, and now they become all the different looking Indians that they had. Even the Mandan Sioux that had blonde hair and some blue eyes and gray eyes in them and everything. From Mongolian and flat-faced people that look somewhat Japanese, like the Hopi Indians and some of those tribes, all the way through Apaches and straight-faced pieces, and people like the Buffalo Nickel that instead of having a nose like a Hopi, they've got a big hooked down Greek looking Jewish type nose and stuff. And all this variants come out of just all you got to do is walk. So, and apparently you've got to go to a different place than you were before. You'd think that all you do is you walk outside and go around in circles and come back in, and if you walked every night, you would evolve to be a different creature totally by the way that they say it, huh? But that's not the way it works, and this isn't April Fool's. Recently, Professor C.G. Nicholas Maskey Taylor of the University of Cambridge sent a letter to the Ministry of Culture in Greece stating that the corrected date of the skull is 700,000 years old and not 300,000, and he has also challenged the government's suppression of information regarding this incredible discovery. Greek Ministry of Education, Religion, and Culture, and they put this down here because that's the address that you get in touch with them at. And he had put this, writing on behalf of the European Anthropological Society, which is the umbrella professional and academic association linking to all national European biological, anthropological, and human biological studies, to express our concerns about the conservation of the Petralona cave and skull and the misinformation of the dating of the skull, as well as the treatment of personnel associated with the conservation of the cave. The basis of our concerns are that the skull has been damaged through many uh, scratches and the crown of a tooth, first molar cut off. The corner of the skull has been damaged. Oh, the skull they got, it was damaged. As requested by Anthropological Association of Greece, what is required is detailed description of the present status of the skull so that no one in future can arbitrarily damage it further. There's also the problem of dating, which has been scientifically dated about 700,000 years ago and not 300,000 years ago, so more than double, as given at the information desk. Well, of course, 300,000 years, and they're putting the other one at 300,000 years. And hey, did these people come down and go in a boat across the Mediterranean, or come in and just go walking all around the Mediterranean and take that walk? You know, there's a very detailed record of the excavations and findings which need to receive further public presentation, but which have not been cataloged so as to prevent specimens going missing. It's very unfortunate that the Greek Archaeological Department stopped Dr. Arius Polonius from his further work in the cave without any explanation. It is also very worrying that Dr. Polonius and his wife were physically attacked and injured in their homes earlier this year, and the culprits have not been found. He's also verbally abused when attempting to give an invited presentation to teachers, the school children. Senior anthropologists, so he got heckled at this one place or whatever by people that were waiting for him to come. Senior anthropologists and geologists have also been denied access to the cave and the specimens for further study on a number of occasions without substantive reasons. Earlier this year, there's also been misinformation given to the Greek Parliament concerning final aspects of the cave. I look forward to your answers, receiving your questions, blah, 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 his reference in his thing. So, the most important conclusion of Dr. Polonius' research regards the coexistence of all main anthropological types, African Kobe, Asian Beijing, and European Petralona, at the same almost period, 700 to 500 and 750,000 years respectively. That means the appearance of the today human main populations races are better phylae from the Greek language. That's where it comes from, phyla. And that will polyphyletic, by the way, is also tending to almost 1 million years ago, and not only to 10,000 or 30,000 years ago, is currently considered worldwide. So he's saying here that there is a distinct human difference between things that are not even proto-human, that come from a couple of steps back. And if you look into it on who ended up getting with who and who didn't, it ended up in a totally radically different place. And while you realize that these are all monkeys, they're radically different kinds of monkeys, but then they're saying that no, this is all the same monkey. Right? Wrong. There's a big difference between a German Shepherd and a wolf. Okay, how about a Chihuahua? Because a Chihuahua and a wolf are the same thing, right? How about a Chihuahua and a German Shepherd? Because they're listed under the same thing. What kind of variance can you get out of something in a short period of time if they are similar but somewhat slightly different, and you start to pick out differences of people? And those differences, through what you live and go through in your daily life, end up making different outcomes. Well, it can't happen in that 1,000 year gap. It can't even happen in the 70 if we have Cro-Magnon at half the point, and it's already still extant in its haplogroups, and it doesn't make any sense. Plus, simple facts that in sub-Saharan Africans there is Salava genes like MUC7 and things they find in no one else, that shows they have archaic integration of something, some hominid, some way back in that. that's different than other people, like they have Neanderthal and Denisovan. There's more Neanderthal, by the way, in Chinese or Oriental people by a couple of percent. I mean, it's what, 2 to 4 on Europeans, and it's 3 to 6 or 7 on Chinese, and some people even show 8. Well, they say in a weird way, if you do it right, and if you have 10%, somehow you can go back 14 generations, and one of them would have been a 50-50. 14 generations, that's not long at all. There was a 50-50 Neanderthal then? No, there wasn't at all. But the people there were kind of, one of the people that somebody admixed with in that group was basically a 50-50 Neanderthal. Like they found recently kind of a 60-40 Neanderthal Denisovan, where they kind of found the Denisovans at that weren't with them. So there shows an interaction there. And so the question becomes simple things like, okay, well, did the Denisovans, did that interaction happen and then they got with somebody, and so that admix happened from one time to these people and those people spread through? Or did it happen from all kind of different people from everywhere? Or is it just one simple early interaction and that spread to all of these people? Like what is thought about the modern Neanderthal. Right? But they think differently totally about, apparently, the way that Neanderthal integration happened to perhaps Orientals than it happened to Europeans. And it's looked at as Europeans got a Neanderthal. It's like, well, they even have more than us, but why you always got to be picking on the white man and stuff? It's not just, hey, I know we're the spaceman and we heralded mankind and stuff, but it goes back much, much farther than this. We're going to be discussing that this year and certain things that show, because if we go any deeper than I have with y'all already, it basically becomes, somewhat conjecture and made up assumptions, and you can string a bunch of assumptions together and it becomes a web. And I talk about the web that I have there, and a web is a strong, sticky device in places, but also it can be flimsy, it can be ever-changing, and it can be somewhat rebuilt by that same spider over and over again, and end up being, it's that same web. So we're going to go into that deeper too, but so it means the appearance of the today human or main populations, races, or even better, phylae from Greek. So different forms or variations on a theme from long ago, not from recently, and one slowly, and the same people evolved. That's not the way it went. And this proves it, basically. And without it, it kind of proves it with the other. You can say, well, okay, here's 50-50 along with the Beijing type. Well, there's a different type of monkey over here than here too. And you go, yeah, but you don't even classify them in the same genus. So what does that tell you? However, independently, if there's a scientific dispute on the above, it's only sad to become aware that research is not allowed to those who are not coordinated to the standard knowledge, risking or even their lives in front of gun shooters. It is to cover up an incredible discovery that powers that be don't want us to have access to. You be the judge. So basically he's saying is this stifled at every point? Now people would say it's stifled at every point because it's wrong. And they go, no, what if after they said it was wrong, we were tested and it showed up that we had it, but then we tested the other ones that we find and it's even later. And then you go, okay, 300,000. Well, 300,000 says it predates the ones in Africa, but then they find one in Africa that's got that, but it's up at the Mediterranean edge and it has Caucasoid traits to it, and it thin nasal slit, and there's all types of cranial forms, and there's a lot of traits that go about certain areas around the temple and jaws and jaw structure and dental forms and all these things they go after. And most of the stuff we're experiencing showing, of course, Caucasians running rampant around the world are pre proto-Caucasians. It's an easy way to say it. And Cro-Magnon is no longer spoken about. Now he's just early Europeans. Oh, how convenient. But that goes back much predating any other civilization there, doesn't it? Well, it's not a civilization, it's a people. Yeah, we found out a lot about him, but oh, he's a caveman. He made some things in caves. That stuff in caves shows correlations to Orion and the sun of the spring and the winter solstice, and the Pleiades and things marked out, Taurus itself. A lot of things. What does that mean? Oh, that could be something as simple as they're like, what the hell, or the meteor storm that happened from back then that was doing it, and they were like noting it. But if they say it's those cave things, that predates the thing that happened at the Younger Dryas. It pinpoints us still talking about it. So we've been talking about this place for a while. I said I was going to do this in that other video, didn't I? I'm going to stop now and keep going. Experiencing the above, I'm asserting that the prohibition of research regarding human history is due to the following. Most obvious, i.e. not exposing political reasons. And there is political reasons behind it. Various worldwide universities and their state-allied forums have the power to influence all of the small-range national institutions in order to achieve the aforementioned prohibitions. So, in turn, this is the most probable due to the fact that such research is allowed only some confidential persons that get to go and do on research in the first place, and people that get selected whenever they find research and are going to do it. They go, what's it look like? Okay, well, let's get Bergen, and Stein and Goldstein and have them work on it. And the writing chapters of human history is only their right. Whoever whatso belong to such clubs and our forums has to be stopped by all existing means, even by falsifying the truth against well-documented evidence, without providing any scientific contradicting arguments. So in other words, you still got your three things, and Lucy had monkey feet. And so your deal over here doesn't look as good as our deal over here. And our deal over here is now as big as an elephant. And you still have the monkey feet. So what's going on with that? Do we all come out of Africa? Or was there an in and out of Africa? Was there an out and in of Africa? People are trying to say it was an out and back in of Africa, but yeah, was it an out of Africa, in and out, and in of Africa? Did it start out, go in, some came out, some never did, way back? Variations on a theme of the monkey people that made us up of hominids. And some never came back in. The Sahara happened. They stayed there. Everybody else changed. And that's at what? Well, it looks like well over 800,000 years ago. No, it goes back to something I said, but I think that video got flagged too for some BS reason, but 1.2 million years ago is the thing that we can say is our common ancestor. That's strange. Why do they keep talking about this 70,000 or 30,000 date? Oh, well, they actually do worse than that, people. They try to make it seem like somehow we were all some people, and black Africans turned black from hanging around the sun and totally into Negroid types, and Chinese people turned into Orientals just from seeing the sea, and all the other Caucasians ended up magically turning into Caucasians because they saw snow. Right? Various world universities and their state-allied forums. Thus, rewriting chapters of human history is only their right. They feel like, oh, they've got to stop that. Even if it shows things like pushing dates a little bit or something. Oh, can't do that. If it fits within, we're good. So you found the oldest so far. So when we found this boat that looks a little bit older than that boat, I've got to now lie. Or can we say boating goes back 1,200 more years now? And I've got to fight that. And I understand the unwillingness to change of science that feels like it's got it all figured out, but understand also that we didn't have it all figured out until we started figuring it all out. And things change all the time. And in my lifetime, it's changed from, well, about 4,000 BC, we were ugly and didn't know what was going on, to, about 4,000 BC, there still was the Sumerians and these people and da-da-da, to all of a sudden, there was Göbekli Tepe, more than double that age, and there was a lot more going on. And in fact, what we think about Neanderthals, they weren't ugly either, and there's these Cro-Magnons that weren't even prognostic at the time, which is very revealing. And say, oh, but it all came from, and there's these people that I've watched a lot of videos during my little hiatus here, and that have these ideas and these that get people to believe there was this fanciful utopian civilization that lived long ago, and it got screwed over, and it wasn't that long ago. And it seems like, yeah, that was us at the Younger Dryas, but how utopian was that society? Well, there's some Upart stuff around here, like the Egyptian bowls, and the one that we just saw that was into these Natufians even, that dates back to 8,500 BC, and says they're making these badass looking, look, it's like the concept of that, and I didn't say it in that video, and it's one thing after I do a video and I go, duh, but in that video there, I didn't say, okay, well, there's people making pottery back then. It's like, well, as we know it, there aren't people making that cool of a pottery with a stand up on the bottom and everything that they've got going on. But I mean, it's reaching it by about 3,000 years. And I talked about a 3,000 year gap. Well, here it is before the gap. But hold on, before the gap, there were already people that were making this, so that even blows that away. But also, they were apparently making pottery. But then somebody was able to take a chunk of stone, and through working it, go, look, that was a rock, it's magic, bam, this looks just like your pottery, only dink, dink, it's made out of stone. It's not much thicker on the rim, all the way through, smooth all the way around it, and I made it out of this marble. What the hell, what cuts marble? Copper doesn't cut marble. Brass doesn't cut marble. You would have an easier time working brass with marble balls or marble, a hammer that you made, than to try to work marble with simplistic brass and arsenic coppered brass and things along that. Well, they found King Tut's dagger. Oh, so they were so they took a bunch of these. Where did they get those damn daggers made at? No, it's a mistake to mention the Uparts, because no, it's not a mistake. It opens up this idea they had meteorific iron from way back when, and these people that brought a Bronze Age and then herald the Iron Age were the same people in two successive waves. Check it. That's easily kind of verifiable by enough data. It isn't getting to the point of mythology here or anything, or trying to say, well, there's a pile of rust here. Are these red ochre people, and where does that come from? Oh, and the fact that you can coagulate blood and then fire it up and actually get iron out of our blood because we have iron-rich blood. And you can make blood swords and things, and that's for another video too. I didn't want to go into all of that stuff, but you know me, I can't keep from rambling. Thus, they're telling you that they've got to be done with confidential persons. Thus, rewriting chapters of human history is only their right. Whoever does not belong to such clubs in our forums has to be stopped by all existing means, and I experienced this so